this video, I'm setting up a new shallow style aquascape using some super unique equipment. The tank I'm working with is a custom ultra shallow design tank, which is 100 by 25 by 15 centimeters. For lighting, I'm using one of Dalua's brand new Illumagic freshwater pixel bundles, which they generously provided for this video. If you've been in the saltwater hobby, you already know that Dalua has been making some of the best lights out there for quite a few years, and now they're stepping into the freshwater hobby with some seriously cool products. I'll leave some links in the description so you can find all of this stuff for yourself. This light setup includes the rear mount, a 90cm infinity rail, 3 Illumagic freshwater pixels, and a scheduler so you can program the lights. There's a lot of different ways you can configure this kit, as the pixels can be mounted anywhere on the rail that you like. Right now I've got the lights mounted for a very even spread, and I have the controller mounted front and center because I love having the little clock visible. But you can tuck it away for a cleaner look if that's what you prefer. For the hardscape, I chose elephant stone, and I've been playing around with a few different layouts for a while, waiting for the cold weather to ease so I could safely order some plants. When it's below zero outside, shipping plants just isn't worth the risk. To build up the background for planting, I'm adding some contra soil, and I used about 4 liters, which is actually a lot less than I expected, but I did make a bit of a mistake, and I didn't fill in the small gaps at the front, middle and sides, which meant the aqua soil rolled forwards. I have no idea how I overlooked this, but I solved it easily enough by grabbing a hammer and breaking up some of the elephant stone into smaller pieces that I could glue into place. Something weird about this stone though, which you might not know, is that it has a totally different color on the inside, which made things look a little bit weird when I glued things into place. I did my best to hide those reddish tones, but it is going to make finding matching detail stones a challenge later on. Normally when I get stone like this, I break it up into smaller pieces to use as detail stone, but once you crack this stuff it looks completely different on the inside, so now I'm scratching my head as what I can use as detail stone instead. I specifically chose species that were already grown immersed to make the transition easier and to minimize melting. If you're in Europe, Invitel actually lets you pick which type of plant you want, so you can get immersed or submerged plant options. Just pick whichever one you want at checkout. For this build, I pretty much opted for all immerged plants. So here's the plant list that I'm going to be using for this project. Chorus gramineus, Hygrophila pinnatifida, type of Bacopa, I'll leave it on the screen, I can't pronounce that one, Liliopsis novazelandae, and Persicaria sp. We also have some Riccia fluitans and some Monte Carlo, but I haven't decided if I'm going to use either of those yet. Since I prefer planting into moist aqua soil, I'm going to give it a light soaking before I start. This is my personal preference, but some people swear by planting into dry aqua soil, but honestly, just go with whatever you have the best experience with. The first plant I'm going to be adding is a Chorus gramineus, which I'm super excited about as this is the first time I'm going to be using it, and I think it's the key plant that'll tie everything together in this scape. Interestingly, it actually smells amazing and has quite a long history in traditional medicine. I'm just placing a couple of clumps on both sides of the tank, trying to spread it out so it looks as natural as possible. The second plant I'm going to be adding is Hygrophila pinnatifida, and this is probably one of the best immersed plants in the hobby. Once it reaches the water surface, it grows like crazy, so it won't be long before it's towering past the light. Into the small gaps that are left, I'm going to be planting Persicaria sp, which I ended up chopping up into a ton of smaller pieces. The tag said this plant is quite tricky to grow, so I'm hoping I can keep it alive as it's the only red plant I have in this scape, so I would really like it to thrive and compete with the other immersed plants. That's the first part of the planting process complete, so I'm going to be adding some white quartz sand to the foreground now. And this is just some generic super cheap stuff that I found online, and I only used about 2.5 kilos to fill this foreground area. I started adding some more foreground plants, I decided to start filling the tank with RO water. My RO unit's pretty slow and it'll take a couple of hours to fill this tank, so I wanted to make sure I got a head start on the process. Once the sand was nice and wet, I added a few more patches of Liliopsis to the foreground, just between the base of some of the rocks at the front. Normally this is where I would add the detail stone to make things look a little bit more natural, but as I explained earlier, elephant stone doesn't quite break up very well as the internals are very red, so I'm just leaving it empty for now. But if you guys have any suggestions on some good detail stones that match elephant stone or that will get quite close, let me know in the comments because I'd love to find something that fits. The last plant I'm going to be adding here is the Bacopa. This is another plant that I'm not super confident about keeping alive, but I'm hoping I'm wrong as it looks really good once it starts breaking the water's surface. Once the tank was about half full with RO water, I switched over to tap water and filled the remaining portion of the tank, and this generally gets my TDS to around 120 to 150. Here's the final look of the tank a few hours later, and if you haven't already noticed, the Illumagic pixels focus most of their light inside the tank with almost no spillover, which looks incredible in a pitch black room. Right now I'm also only running them at about 35%, and even at that percentage they make the entire aquascape pop. So after letting the tank cycle for a couple of weeks with a little pre-cycled hang on the back filter, I'm finally able to add some new inhabitants. I picked 2 fish species for this tank, though I'm not entirely convinced on one of them after seeing them in the tank. I picked neon blue rasboras and glow light tetras. I picked the glow light tetras because I figured they would act as a dither fish, the potentially shy little rasboras, but apparently it's the other way around. The little neon rasboras are super active and the glow lights are a little less interesting. They're also probably a little bit too big and kind of throw off the scale. So I think I'll swap them out at some stage for something else, and I'm thinking maybe some strawberry rasboras instead. Let me know what you think in the comments. I also got 4 blue cherry shrimp. Normally I would have got 10 or 15. These were the last 4 they had in the store, but I was lucky enough to get 2 buried females, so I'm hoping they'll drop plenty of little baby shrimp before too long. As the algae stage is still slowly progressing, I'm also adding a stack of ram's horn snails to deal with any plant leaf, melt, and any algae that pops up that they are inclined to eat. A lot of people don't like these snails, but I think in a tank like this they do such a good job, it would be a crime not to add them. I've also been really impressed with the light so far. I'm currently running it for 8 hours a day with an hour ramp up and ramp down time. I'm also only using it at 35% intensity, which still seems to be getting the plants going nuts. Some of the Persicaria has already started to get what looks like seeds or potentially flowers, and the Pinnatifida and Acorus grass has started to sprout plenty of new shoots, which is pretty awesome. While you can't adjust any of the color channels on the pixels, the default color is pretty much spot on, and I don't think I would change anything anyway. I run most of my lights at a pretty similar spectrum. Time is also easy to use, and you can hide it wherever you want, though for me personally, I like to have it front and center because I do use a little timer as a clock as well. And as always, I'll have links to everything in the description if you want to check out everything in a bit more detail. While this tank is on the window ledge, it doesn't get any direct sunlight at any time of the day, so I thankfully won't have to worry about any crazy sun-induced algae blooms or temperature spikes. I'm also planning to set up another identical tank next to this one, so another super shallow tank, but my big question is, should it be a full river style scape for hill stream loaches and maybe some danios, or should I go for something like a boost only shallow scape?